Nobody knew who I was till I put on the mask.
All right, what's up, guys? So you guys know that we've been in a series called The Good Life, where we're talking about living the good life that Jesus has for us. And last week you kind of talked a little bit about what that means, what it means to live the good life. And I know for me personally, like when I think of the good life, I've always kind of thought of, making a lot of money, having a lot of fun, doing all the good stuff that this world has to offer, and kind of always having that next big thing coming, that next big thing to do. But something that I found is that, hey, even though I'm always wanting that next thing, I'm always wanting the newest iPhone or the big experience, wanting to go to that game. A couple months after those things happen, the shininess kind of starts to wear off, and those things don't bring the same sort of satisfaction that they once did. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this before, but in this series where we're talking about how do we get the most out of life and how do we get everything that Jesus has to offer us, what does that mean to you guys?
Yeah, well, I think last week we talked about how the good life is essentially like not living on autopilot. And Jesus even said, if you want to live life to the full, if you want to live abundant life, you have to do it through me. And so I think our default is to live the life that you just described, right? The good life, the one that's depicted in songs and movies, social media, all those things. But the reality is, it's just like you said, those things fade away. They don't last forever. But if we truly focus on Jesus and we love him and love others, then we can start to experience that good and full life that he talks about.
Yeah, so we were introduced last week to Galatians 5:22 through 23, and it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such thing there is no law." So kind of unpacking that a bit, Paul was saying that like this time for the Galatians, if they were to be asked what the good life is for them, it would be a lot of them just like being like, we have to follow these things, we have to do XYZ in order to be fulfilling the good life for themselves. But what he's really saying here is it's not so much doing these things, but it's being these things. Like being love, being joy, having peace, having patience, all of those things. It's not so much the doing, but the pursuing of like being that.
Yeah, that's good. And if we look even farther in that verse, when we get to verse 25, Paul actually goes on to say, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. And so right away, it's like, okay, well, what does it mean to keep in step with the Spirit? And I think what Paul is saying here is like exactly what we've just been talking about. And that is not living on our own understanding and actually walking step by step throughout life, yielded to the Holy Spirit that lives inside us. And I think that if we will sort of lean on the Spirit and not ourself, our own hearts, our thoughts, and all those things, then that's when we'll start to experience the fruits of the spirits. When you keep in step with the Spirit for like a extended amount of time, not just a one-time thing or a once-a-week thing, but something that's daily, it's routine, and it's something that we're sort of steadfast in.
Like Paul here in these verses to Galatians is also referring back to Jesus when he was talking in John 15, and he says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." So I feel like that these two passages are really connected. And when Paul says, hey, these are the things that you want, the fruits of the Spirit, he's referencing Jesus, where Jesus tells us if you want to bear fruit, if you want to experience fruit of the Spirit, you have to abide in me and I in you. And outside of me in the world, you're not going to experience the same thing. But in me, in my Spirit, you will start to experience that fruit. So practically, what do you guys think that this looks like on a day-to-day perspective?
Yeah, I think it mostly, like, one of the biggest things you can do, or I guess one of the biggest things you can't do, is kind of look at it big picture, because I think a lot of times that gets like super overwhelming and you want to kind of give up super quickly, but instead kind of take that step by step, day by day. I love the kind of example of Mount Everest. And if you ask anybody that has climbed Mount Everest, if you know anybody, I don't know anybody. But you hear these stories of the people that have finally made it to the very top, like, and you're like, how did you do this? A lot of times they're like, you just have to take it step by step. You can't kind of look straight up the mountain and be like, I'm going to do this all at once, because that is super overwhelming. So just kind of staying focused on like the little things every single day, like praying every day, getting in the word every day, and focus on just like, what can I do today to be in step with the Holy Spirit, and not what do I need to do this whole entire month or for the next year, but just slowly and surely, like, take it one step at a time.
Yeah, and I think the next thing that we can do is to actually like practice ways of keeping in step with the Spirit. I think, a lot of us think that the Holy Spirit, since it's living inside of us, it's kind of this like passive thing that maybe we only call on in specific moments. But just like building a routine and building habits, I think if we can become familiar with the fact that the Holy Spirit lives inside us and actually spend time engaging the Holy Spirit and sort of putting us in positions where we're calling on it, leaning on it, and not just sitting kind of like looking up at the sky waiting for something to happen. Everything that we've talked about right now is about the Holy Spirit leads us to the good life. And today, like, the good life means living in step with the Spirit. So overall, just continuing to practice the ways that we can encounter the Holy Spirit. Well, the reason that we filmed this video is because it is Labor Day weekend, and we don't want you to have to alter your plans and come back early from being out of town with your family. But what we do ask is that you actually do take time to watch this video, and not just stop at that, but maybe send it to someone in your small group, or maybe in your group message with your small group. Start to kind of just send them what your main takeaways were, your main thoughts. And I think as you start to think about what we talked about in this video, maybe you can start to share some of those practices that you want to start engaging in so that you can keep in step with the Spirit. We're thankful that you guys have sort of spent your Labor Day with us. We look forward to seeing you next Sunday.